What is up, folks? Casual Dad here to talk about Warhammer combat cards, and it is synced PvP season. You're going to have to forgive me. I lost my voice this weekend, so I'm going to be a little raspy. But this is one of those things I wanted to make sure to catch, because we don't do synced PvP all that often, and it's one of the things that players can have the most questions about. So just real quick, what is synced PvP? Most of the time when you're playing Warhammer combat cards, you're playing against an AI, just a computer, playing the deck of someone who was a human player. So human players create the decks, they play them in the ladder, and then they're matched up randomly against human players, but played by a computer. So you'll notice computers make a lot of kind of basic mistakes, they do some weird stuff, and they don't react to your deployment the way that a human player would. So that's one of the biggest things to remember first for Sync PvP, is as you are deploying and playing your cards, your opponent will react to you in a human way, which is a totally different dynamic and is kind of cool. On the timing aspect, synced games are much faster, just because so they are faster because there's a very aggressive timer, so you have a limited amount of time to deploy your card and make your moves, and so does your opponent. And if you get 3 strikes in a game, you will automatically forfeit and go away. It's also very aggressive about disconnects, so for me personally, even moving around the house, if you switch from a Wi-Fi network to a range extender, it will usually automatically drop you. So watch out for that. If you are playing a game, stay put for a bit until it's done. And you cannot put it down and walk away the way you normally can because the timer will log you out. So that's a couple things to knock in here too. I also want to highlight the modifiers. So it's an even playing field, so all cards are maximum level, every player's collection, all of them. You get 400 deck points and 8 bodyguards, so you'll have the double max deck points and then also maximum number of bodyguards. And there are Warlord restrictions. The biggest one that always jumps out to me every time is that you can't pick Lilith Hesperax, of course. She's one of my favorites and she'd be overpowered as crap. But so I'm going to do a quick Warlord review. Actually, let's talk about that. So you are going to run into Greyfax. Greyfax is just insanely powerful with this modifier, because Greyfax's bonus maxes out at 151 unspent deck points, which if you have 400 to spend, you can see you can really load that up and still get the max benefit. This thing in particular gets a base attack of 264 at max level with max bonus from Greyfax, which is just crazy. I think it's the highest single ranged attack in the game with Barrage, so it will hit adjacent targets as well. Super good. You're going to see a lot of Greyfax, so watch out for that. Incredibly powerful. Also, because of the really high number of deck points, one of the most powerful traits you're going to see is going to be Big Game Hunter, and you will see a lot of high shield counts that you won't see normally, because even your epic cards will have shields, and then your legendary cards will have up to 4 shields, where usually they'll probably have a couple. You're rarely going to see cards with max shields. So make sure you have some tech to get rid of shields. Big Game Hunter is good because most Warlords, not counting Greyfax, will be running a lot of 40 plus cost cards to fill up those deck points. So those are really powerful. Another kind of key piece to keep in mind is the rule of thumb being that a flat number is bad, a percent is good. So if you have someone like, a bad example because Magus is actually not so bad, but Magus's trait, whenever a friendly card dies, you get a flat 20 wounds gain on your friendly cards that are still on the board. 20 is usually high. In this modifier, it is extremely low. So those flat numbers are not as good. The same applies for, what is your name? I know this guy, Zephyrblade. So this flat +3, most of the Eldari Warlord abilities all trigger, say, +3, +7, +15. Those are flat numbers, those are bad. Greyfax is a percent base. So percent ability on your max level stats is going to be much higher. Likewise for Tolmaron. What's your butt? Artemis. God, bad day, guys. Sorry. So any percentage-based ability will be dramatically more powerful just because the stats are generally so much higher. So Artemis is automatic damage, the buff to range damage for Tolmaron, and then, of course, Greyfax, and then also things like... Well, we'll talk about that. So those are kind of some general rule of thumb. Your most powerful cards, this is unfortunate for new players, the biggest challenge being that this is max level, so your level isn't going to matter, but your deck collection, your card collection will. So if you don't have specific cards to fill in gaps, it's going to be more challenging than not. So you want to lean on Warlords and factions that you have the strongest collection for. Probably your most powerful cards are going to be your legendary cards, because those get the double traits at max level. But your most improved cards, based on the ones that you're used to using, are going to be your epic cards. You probably have 2 traits on several of your legendaries already. Very rare that anyone has 2 traits on their epic cards, but since they're max level, all of them will benefit from their secondary trait. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Another thing too, any warlord or strategy that relies on cards dying is going to be bad in this, because you want to trade very, very aggressively. You don't want your cards dying too quickly. You have to be making kills and having your stuff stick on the board. So anybody like most of the servants of the Emperor warlords are going to be pretty weak in this. The possible exception being if they cost very little, they give you a couple extra deck points to squeeze some scarier stuff in. So there is still some benefit to them, but there are other warlords that are so powerful that I would kind of avoid those. Some really strong ones to go ahead and highlight. I'm going to talk about, so that kind of disqualifies a lot of the field. So these 2 right here, your Corpse Lord isn't going to be very good. Tolmaron's going to be good. Zephyr Blade, no. Mask is probably very strong, although I haven't tried it, just because of that attack first mechanic will last longer if your cards have higher hit points. Zodgrod is going to be bad too, because you have to include some squishy cards and you want to include a full deck. So unless you have some of the super heavy cards in your deck, that could be good, but Zodgrod himself is not good. And including those 9 sub 8 point cards is going to really, really hurt you. So I wouldn't tend to go him. You will see very powerful cards, so you could see Glogothrox perform well. Rakarth is not going to be good because that percent is +7 is not going to matter much at all. Cards aren't going to be dying quickly enough, and the total volume of health you're going to gain is fairly low. Medicae is percent-based. That is extremely powerful. Inspire is percent-based. That's extremely powerful, just in terms of traits that are out there. Some of the warlords that are going to be really, really strong. So, quick break. Talk about top warlords. The ones you're going to see a lot is going to be Greyfax, but then there are some other ones out there as well. The Avatar is... We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go on through here and talk about some of the top warlords. Of course, Greyfax. Also, this guy has the ability where just passive does a percent bonus to damage and defense of your cards, which with the already very high stats of Tau shooting cards is extremely powerful. So this guy's really, really good. Also lets you have a heavily shielded deck. You're going to run into Shas'O a lot, so you want to make sure you have your shields, your anti-shield tech in there, and also watch out for Big Game Hunter and the really big beefy cards. You're likely to see both the Big Barrage Flyer and then both of the heavy battle suits, one of which has shields, the other one has Big Game Hunter. Those are very scary pieces. Shas'O is an excellent warlord to bring, but also one you want to be ready for. Being epic, a lot of players don't have him, so you want to have a plan for him, and if you do have him, go ahead and try to run him, because he's, I think, probably the single most powerful Tau warlord in the game. It's just kind of challenging to get there because he levels extremely slowly and is hard to get. A close second is going to be Onva, just because your cards have a ton of hit points if they have shields, and they have a ton of hit points, and they're likely to take more damage than usual and also end up with a higher attack bonus than usual. So he's certainly one to consider. He's also quite cheap, so you can really load up your deck. Darkstrider you can use, but his end game is not as good. He's just so close to Onva in terms of cost, and then I think Onva's ability is going to trigger more. So of the two, I would rate Onva higher, but of course he is legendary, so you may not have him. If you only have Darkstrider, I personally would not recommend running Tau. Those free attacks are nice, but again, that's an ability that depends on your cards dying, which you don't want. You are going to see some Psychic, not a ton, so you could get away with a sneaky card like Zagstruck popping in there with those free attacks to do just extra damage. Him being cheap also lets you really fill up that deck. I have found that Orcs are relatively weak in this current campaign, just because they don't have anything that really goes off the rails with this modifier, and don't have really strong answers to the stuff that's out there. Snickrot can be good, but his ability has kind of a peter out effect where you suddenly aren't getting a benefit from it, which will be fairly early in these games with max level. And then you're not going to benefit from Badrick's ability just because things take so long to bring down. So I would definitely... I don't want to say steer clear of Orcs, but Orcs are not in a very strong place. Aside from your percentage-based warlords, some of the best warlords for the synced PvP are going to be those that have really good top-level stats. Those being probably these two here. So the Avatar and the Swarmlord themselves, their abilities don't do a ton during the course of the game. It's not nothing, but it is, it's there. But the Avatar, they both are incredible endgame pieces. The Swarmlord in particular is just really hard to bring down, and just hits tremendously hard with those max shields, that max inspire, a ton of hit points. So, and also the defensive ability of the Swarmlord helps because these games do tend to be a little bit longer because the cards in there are so beefy. So let's see, we'll do top tier. So looking at top tier Warlords, you're probably looking at Greyfax, you're looking at Shas'O Rely, and you're looking at, anytime there's a max level campaign, one of the best Warlords out there is gonna be Helbrecht. Again, it's a percent buff that you get with him, and then also just Space Marine melee cards. If you could put all of the most expensive Space Marine melee cards in the same deck, they just snowball like crazy. So he's a really good one to bring. I have not seen him very much this time around, which is a little surprising. But he's there, certainly one to consider. If you have the cards to fill out a deck, this guy is going to be completely nuts in this meta, because his ability to shut down enemy card traits will do things like it'll remove your high-level Endless, it'll remove Fear, it'll remove shields. You have to have the cards to capitalize on that. So in Votann, you're probably looking really heavy shooting, and you may not have all the cards to fill it, because the high expensive ones in particular, there's a, I think, 60.1 that I don't have, that you really kind of need to pull that out. It's pretty fun to play Votann, because seeing them at max level is very rare, but the card pool is so limited it can be challenging in this particular campaign. So, let's see. So top tier we already talked about. We talked Greyfax. We talked Helbrecht. We already talked about Shas'O and Onva. Those are really, really, really strong. Some other ones to consider are going to be Artemis. You want a really aggressive deck with Artemis to really benefit from his trait in the best possible way. That was too much. Sorry, the throat thing. Had to push through a bit of gunk there. But yeah, so Artemis can be extremely powerful, does free damage to cards, but again, his trait is best, or is most powerful when your cards are dying. So you'll get a lot of damage out of it, but you'll either get minimal out of it because your cards aren't dying, or you won't get enough out of it because your cards are dying, and you can't finish out the game with just his trait. So that is something to watch out for. Another Warlord I haven't tried yet, but I think is going to be really good, is going to be Illic. Just because he has the ability, like, you can load up with really hard-hitting range cards, and then you don't have to kill things outright to remove them from the board. And his ability is if an enemy card takes 65% of it or more of its base health, so you hit it 15% more than half, and it goes away. With the sheer volume of hit points that cards have on the board, you have to hit them very hard, but you have to hit them, you know, like 2/3 of their total health. So this will be incredibly scary, especially with the hitting power of Eldari, especially flyers. That is a super strong ability. You do need the tech to watch out for shields, but you can kill the stuff, the unshielded stuff around shielded cards so quickly that he could be a really, really strong piece, especially with his target acquired trait, which again will be max level to help you clear out some of those powerful Warlords at the end. Now again, I haven't tried him, so I may actually go ahead and try him right now, just to show you a synced PvP game so we can see it. So first things first, you zoom all the way to the bottom and you start with your heaviest hitting expensive cards, if you got them. Regen is again a flat, no, regen is a flat number, so it's okay. Endless is very good. Let's see how this guy's. Poison is very scary at max level, just because it does a flat 16 per turn, which can add up real quick. I'll go and do this and see what else I got. Okay, 47. I'll play around with this a bit. I may end up with some points left on the table, because this really is kind of the build I want. 45. Ooh, big game hunter's real good. Doesn't have a lot of hit points, though, so we're going to go ahead and swap this out. That gives us some... Oh, no, we don't have enough. Alright, we'll keep that in there. What else to do? This is 43. We probably gotta drop one of these guys in here. Yeah. Threw in a little melee tech just to have a little bit of a defense there. I've got the 2 area effect Psionic Blast, so these 2 will help clear shields so that your shooting attacks can have their best impact. You've got some Barrage, you've got Barrage. This should, fingers crossed, be pretty good. I'm going to play this one game, then we'll call it a video, and then I do want to do another video later that's actual games played, so that you can see some of that, but I want to do that without making this video too long. So we're going to play this one out, okay. You are probably going to see a fair amount of Avatar because he's a great endgame piece, and because he does slightly charge up the... And so you've got that deploying. We'll see the counter. Because the counter's so aggressive, you are going to see a fair number of opponents just time out. Whether they walked away or they have a bad internet connection, whatever's going on, it's not uncommon for games to just tap out and then give you the win. So if that happens, I will play another one just to actually see this played out, because it looks like that is what's about to happen. I will also say the time between turns can be slower. Let's come on. Interesting. This is a much longer wait than I would have expected. Maybe it's longer on desktop. Playing on mobile, it's very aggressive. So we may sit here for a bit. So while we're waiting, I'll just go ahead and recap. Oh, there it is on the... Okay. Yeah, it's a pretty aggressive timer. You'll see a strike counter pop up there. And there's a strike. It will automatically deploy a random card from their hand in a random slot. All right, so he's just going to time out. And the first time the timer hits, it can be a little bit longer, so you have a little bit of grace period when the game starts, and then it goes fairly quickly. Once you get to your third strike, the timer pops up very fast and is much shorter. So even if someone times out, it's not as aggressive as it could be. In some games, aggressive slow playing can really kill the experience. I will say the devs here did a pretty good job making sure that's not as big of an issue with this. So I prefer the speed and the flexibility of being able to put the game down and come back to it, of playing against a computer all the time, or most of the time. But I will say I really enjoy these synced PvP events, especially because the rewards are very good. And we'll look at those in a second once this guy times out all the way. Tick, 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 tick. That is kind of a bummer, though. So I won't even have to play a turn of this one, which is sad because I wanted to show that. But good job, buddy. Okay, so there's a game, you see a win. I'll grab those rewards and I can show you what the reward track is. Wasn't terribly impressed with that deck anyway. I was playing Avatar with a bunch of range cards. So okay, here's the reward track. You get a bunch of card packs, but then some really powerful card copies. So you got the random card packs. The Death Jester is a very strong card to have. The free gold is nice. The Wraithseer is one of my favorite cards in the game. And I'm one copy away from getting that second level trait. That's fantastic. And then, of course, the Avatar is not that scary in synced PvP, but is really good in the ladder, and that will get me that ranged buff, which is awesome, and a nice hit point buff, too. So, yeah, really excited about this. Rewards are good. You can continue playing this beyond the reward track, which is why you're going to see that 1 gold there. I believe you do get 1 gold for every single win, which is just there to have a reward. That's just a way they put it in there so it wouldn't end. So that's synced PvP. Gonna go ahead and try for one more game real quick. And while I'm waiting for this one, just to recap real fast, the key points are percentage good, flat number bad. Epic will be your most improved cards. Legendary will probably be your most powerful cards, but don't skimp on the common cards. Max level is max level, regardless of what card you got in there. And that is certainly something to consider. Top tier Warlords. Greyfax. Helbrecht, Shas'O Rely, those are going to be like very, very strong performers right at the top tier. Most other Warlords can perform, but don't rely on the hero ability of anything that does a flat number. If you bring a Warlord that's cheaper, bring that so that you can just completely load up the deck, not because you expect their trait to actually do anything dramatic. Another thing you'll notice here is because deployment is so much more important, I should have mentioned this earlier, I don't know if I did. Because deployment is so much more important in terms of what order you do and what you can react to, deploying second gives you the best chance to react to your opponent. Deploying first gives you the best chance to attack first. So depending on how your deck goes, if it's a very aggressive deck, you will want to shoot first, but it could be worth taking some slower cards just so you'll tend to deploy second. But if it's a very defensive deck or a very reactionary deck, you want to deliberately take some slower cards or lower initiative cards so that you can benefit from the from moving your card second. And that means also making the last move where you can really react to things. Now I don't want to shoot that. If you have super heavies, I will go ahead and say, you can run decks that aren't full decks. Unless you're running Greyfax or have super heavies, chances are you're going to run max decks. Even just to fill out the points, you're going to have to. You don't have to, legitimately. You can run partial decks, but I usually do, just because I like to squeeze the most out of these decks as best as possible. And this is going to be interesting. This is the first time I've gone against Farsight in this campaign. Ouch. Who's not a bad piece. Let's make sure we take that guy out. First time going against Farsight in this campaign. I'm curious to see what other cards are in there, because that's a low card count deck, which may mean that Farsight's ability actually triggers. But Farsight himself doesn't have shields, so he's definitely bait for Illick's ability. Just moving that cop trough around for a bit. This guy may actually have me. We'll see. I did want to test out Illick. It could be just because of which cards I drew, which is a downside to having your max level decks, or the target I had. I may tweak this deck to put in some more expensive hitters, but to also include target acquired. Target acquired is a really powerful ability in this, this campaign, obviously. Especially with Illick because of the option, because you want to focus your fire and remove big things as quickly as possible. Okay, I see where this is going. Now this is funny though, because he's going to hit me hard and probably board wipe me here. But that will give me a follow-up turn to really benefit from my ability with Illick. Now, he may know that, but we'll see. Oh yeah, look at that. Cough drop. Sorry. Don't want to chew in a mic. That's a terrible thing to do. Okay. Now I'm not doing the math here, so we'll see how this goes. The hope here is that I can really do some significant damage to these cards. And I should be able to do that relatively easily. We'll see if I have enough to bring down dude in the middle. I should comfortably take out Darkstrider, of course, which is good. Take down some shields. Downside, though, is that I was not able to kill that. So here's the thing. This is where Illick is going to come in very powerful in this, because he has to play blah, 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 Commander Farsight. If he then cannot follow up and take out at least 2 of these cards, which he may be able to, I think with melee, with the heavy melee buff, if he does melee, he can take out both of those on the right, and then I may not be able to bring him down. I don't think he can take out the Crimson Hunter, though. And if he can't, between Illick's primary attack, max level target acquired, or dead shot, excuse me, and then also the Crimson Hunter, I should be able to take out Farsight. What he does here is going to make a big difference. Psychic. Okay, so he's aware of that. This is a good player. Love it. Now, I'm surprised. I would have expected a stronger melee bonus. Here's the thing, though. So again, he's aware of that and doesn't want to do it either. Now, I don't want to hit him either because I don't want to risk doing less than 65% of his total health in a single round, because I will lose if that happens. Let's see what he does. And I've got a range debuff on the board, so if we end up in a ready fight, it's just, I've got it. Because this has no melee attack. If it did, I would be hosed. Because it doesn't, I'm just going to, eventually I'll just go ahead and shoot him and probably take him off the board, which I may actually already be able to do. Is that 60%? I don't think so. But still, there's no incentive for me to go ahead and attack first yet. Next turn, I think I've got him, no matter what. But we'll see what he's got going here. What I really don't want to happen is him to have enough range damage to take out the Crimson Hunter. If he does that, I am toast. If he doesn't, I've got him. Okay, well, all right, let's call him. Ooh, nail biter. Love it. Okay, so Illick's ability there, you saw it trigger some, not as much as I would have expected. That was actually a pretty tough matchup, so that is a thing to watch out for. And the Greyfax matches will be as well, because they have a lot of fear they have a lot of high health cards that are under 40 points. So that's a tricky one. But in general, ranged is going to be more powerful than melee. When you're talking max level here. Yeah, interesting. I gotcha. Oh, thing of beauty. I love it. Okay, and we're smack in the middle here. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Keep this relatively short. I will probably do another video of actually playing some games sometime later in the day and post that up too. But hey, good luck out there. On a sportsmanship note, if you do run max decks, that will help everybody else max out their benefit of this free card. You don't have to do that, but it is something just to keep in mind to kind of, support the community. So that's it. Good luck. Let me know what you think.